Hey, we'll be live in just a few minutes. We're talking about when parents are not on the same page, and not just parents, grandparents, anyone involved in the parenting process with young adult children or just adult children. I'll be back in just a moment. Okay. Good morning. We are looking good here. Let me take care of one other thing that I'm going to put in the chat. So if you are tuning in, my name is Jonathan, and I am a family therapist. I am also an addictions counselor, and I'm the one who started this group and this Facebook page and the YouTube page and all of that. And what I'm looking for now is just the link to put in here, and then we're going to get going. And I just had that. Where did it go? All right, here it is. What I'm doing is I'm putting the link to the email list and the Facebook group in here because those are really good communities to be a part of. The Facebook group is Parents of Adult Children Failure to Launch, and it is an excellent place to connect with community and supports. And there is also the email list, which is a great place to get tools and information that directly helps parents who have a young adult who is struggling. And that is what it is all about. So if you get on that email list, you get on the Facebook group, those will both be great supports for you. Okay, I think we have all of that up, and it is looking good. Except for I cut off the feed again. Excuse me. All right. I did it again. I don't know what's going on here. Okay. Transition. Okay. Well, sorry for that rough start. But I think we are good. Awesome. Okay. So, do you have your coffee? Do you have your beverage whenever you're watching this? I know a lot of people watch this after the fact, and that's totally okay. I get it. It's in the morning. You got stuff to do. Things are going on. No problem whatsoever. I'm glad that you were watching at Resource. But here's what's happening. Every 10:30 weekday, I'm going live, and it's just to chat. It's just to connect with the people who, with parents, with grandparents, with anyone who is trying to figure out how to help their adult child, right? So there is the YouTube library. I encourage you to get on there because I'm consistently putting on videos and information and trainings on there. I just put several last night. And so that is the Jonathan Leake Family Therapist. That's the name of the YouTube channel, and that's how you can look it up. And also on the Facebook group, that is also a place where I give talks regularly, and we talk about this stuff. But this is just a chat in the morning, and this is getting into, well, we're starting the second full week of this, and anyone who has any questions, wants to talk, wants to connect, it's just a time to take it wherever we want to go. So if you are watching this at whatever point, if you have a question, a comment, put it in the chat, and if you are watching it afterwards, put that comment in there. So here is what we're talking about this morning. And this came directly from some comments that some people put and questions that they were asking in a couple different areas, mainly in the Facebook group. What do you do when the parents are not on the same page? That's what I want to talk about today, right? And we can take it anywhere where the conversation goes from there, but I want to start by giving you some thoughts about that, because that is a very, very common thing, right? Where you have a struggling young adult, and then the parents are seemingly contradicting each other. They're conflicting. They are overcompensating for each other, and it complicates the whole situation. And let me tell you, it's not always parent to parent, right? Quite often I talk with families who it's their child's grandparent, or it's another family member, right? And I was talking with someone recently. Their struggle was every time they just try to set boundaries, their adult child, would just go to the grandparent, right? The grandparent would give them money. The grandparent would let them stay overnight or stay for an extended period of time. The grandparent would let them borrow the car. And so the parents are trying to let natural consequences take hold and have these boundaries, but they felt like they were being undermined by the grandparents, right? The parents in this situation. And sometimes it's another family member, or another person in their life who is enabling or doing that kind of thing. And those are very difficult situations. When it comes to parents, most often what I see is you have one parent who's perhaps overreacting, and you have another parent who's underreacting, right? Who's avoiding the situation. Or you have one parent that's too harsh, is taking a really hard line, and you have another parent who's being too soft, right? You have one who's in that enabling role, and maybe someone else is in a role where maybe they're too involved, right? There's many different kinds of scenarios, but basically you're not on the same page, right? The people involved are not on the same page. So I wanted to talk about that. And if that's you, if you have experienced that, then let me know. What's your situation, right? What kind of moments have you had where you're not connecting with the other people who are in this parenting guiding role? I would love to hear that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why this tends to happen. One of the biggest reasons that I see parents not being on the same page. And I'm just going to say parents from here on out. Like I said, it could be a grandparent, it could be another family member, just people who are in that influential role and they're not on the same page. So when parents are not on the same page, the biggest reason that I find, and it's more of a pattern, right? It's they're being reactive versus proactive. And what I mean by that, there's not a lot of thought, right? There's not a lot of conversation ahead of time about what's the goal here? How are we going to handle this? What are we going to do if our child doesn't follow through? What are we going to do if they make that choice again, right? It's not communicated, right? So maybe the parents are in a place where they're having a difficult time communicating themselves, just in general, or this is something that they don't know how to communicate about, right? Or maybe that's just their pattern. They're not very good communicators. But at any rate, or you know what? Sometimes it comes out of the blue, right? Something happens that they just weren't expecting, right? So it's not that you always can talk about everything ahead of time, but if that pattern is there where it's become reactive, we're just trying to make a decision in the moment on how to respond, how to react. That's where a person's natural tendencies are going to come out, right? The parent's fears, right? If one of them is a nurturer and just really wants to keep the calm and keep the peace and doesn't want anyone to be hurt or have a lot of bad emotions, then that side's probably going to come out in their reaction, right? If they're a fixer, right, then that's probably going to happen. Okay, I'm going to solve this. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to switch and change this situation. That's probably the thing they're going to go to. If there's a lot of fear, that could come out in perhaps anger, right? That they're just really upset that this is happening and they're worried about what's going to happen and that anger's coming out. So maybe that's where they're going to be too harsh, right? Or maybe they're an avoidant, right? They avoid things, right? That's their natural thing. It's like, okay, this is a stressful situation. I don't know what to do. I'm going to shut down, right? So when you haven't talked about things ahead of time and you're just reacting, kind of your natural reactions or whatever the biggest motivator for you as a parent is probably going to come out. It's probably going to very much affect what you're doing. And to parents or however many people are involved in this situation, they're different people, right? So you have two parents. They're probably, those natural reactions are unlikely to be the same, right? So you're going to have one person who's getting angry and one person who's getting sad. You got one person who's avoiding and one person who's getting way too involved, right? Whatever it is, that's a really common pattern that I see. And it's something to be aware of, right? So in that situation, you need to talk, right? You need to communicate. And I want to talk about that communication, right? Because that was actually one of the specific questions that someone asked in the Facebook group is they said, well, how do you help the other parent understand that we're not on the same page, that we're contradicting each other, that we're making it worse as parents, or we're not dealing with this effectively? Well, you got to talk, right? Otherwise, it's going to be something passive aggressive, or it's going to be controlling, right? You're going to try to do something behind the other parent's back. You're not going to let them know. You're going to be secretive about it, or you're just going to be controlling. Like you get out of the way. I'm going to do this, or you're going to act on your own. All of those are going to be ineffective, right? And possibly hurtful and harmful to your relationship. So any way you cut it, you got to have a conversation. And I'm going to suggest that you focus that conversation in two areas. One is why, right? Understand each other, right? Why are you taking the approach you're taking? Right. And it's another way of saying, like, what are you thinking? Right. What are you feeling about what's going on with our child? Right. I noticed that every time they don't follow through, you tend to go in there with guns blazing, and really hot, and you're angry, all right, and you're yelling. Why is that your response? Right now, you could guess, right? I mean, I could take a good guess if someone is angry and they're going in there yelling. They're yelling because they're angry, they're upset, it happened again, that type of deal. But I'm still going to be curious, right? Why not take a different approach, right? Why not try to talk with them? What's going on? You and your partner or the other person involved, you want to feel like you're on the same page. Right? And to feel on the same page, you want to feel heard. You want to feel understood, right? So it's not a conversation like, hey, you're being too angry. Cut it out, right? It's more of being able to connect. Why is this making you so angry? I get it, right? I'm upset about this too. Or I'm scared. I'm showing my emotion in a different way. But let's be on the same page. This is a problem. We need to come together. So you talk about why, right? And when you understand where your partner is coming from, right? The other person is coming from, you're already more connected, and you're going to have a better idea of how to come together, right? How to problem solve, okay? Because I understand this is important to you. Here's what's important to me. Here's why you're doing what you're doing. Here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. You come together. So you have that conversation and understand each other. And then the other part of the conversation is, what are the goals, right? What are we trying to do here, right? What is the goal? Are we unified that we want our adult child to move out in a year, right? Because that could be a thing. One of them's like, you know what? I'm okay with them sticking around for another 12 years. Maybe not, maybe though, but often it's more of a, well, I want them to stay as long as they need to. Well, I want them to be out in a year, right? That's a conflict, right? But perhaps you're both closer than you realize if you talk about it, right? Because maybe as long as they need to, can be a year, right? Or it can be 6 months or whatever it is, but you got to get on the same page. What's the goal, right? Is the goal for them to become independent and to move out? Is the goal for them to get through school? Is the goal for them to, even on a smaller level, is the goal to get them into therapy, to deal with their anxiety, right? To deal with their addiction? What's the goal here? Right? What are we trying to do? And another way of looking at that, of having that conversation, is, what does our adult child need to learn? How do they need to grow, right? Do they need better habits? Do they need to beat that addiction? Do they need to learn a skill, right? What are they learning? How do they need to grow? Because that's going to really direct your approach, right? Because if they need to learn to solve their problems, and maybe a specific problem, right? They need to learn how to make enough money to pay for their bills, right? You start talking about that as parents and you realize, like, okay, well, if we keep paying for things, or if we keep letting grandma pay for these things, they're not really going to have a need to do this, right? And so all of a sudden it's like, wait, all right, they need to learn how to work harder and to pay for stuff, and they're not going to do it as long as we're paying for stuff, right? So let's get on the same page here, right? When they start freaking out, when they start complaining or worrying or stressing about their bills, right? One of us can't jump in and pay for that, right? We need to be unified, and here is why, right? And so you're having that conversation ahead of time. Because when parents say to me, how do I get the other person on the same page, right? How do, what they keep going this different direction. They keep paying for things, or they keep doing this, or being too harsh. I say, well, did you talk about it? And a lot of times what they say is like, yeah, we talk about it, but when do you talk about it, right? Do you talk about it ahead of time, or you talk about it as it's happening, right? Or as something just happened. So you really, and maybe both parents, like, play this and watch it together, right? Because sometimes you need to just set a time and say, okay, we're going to go talk about this, right? Let's go out. Let's go out on the terrace and let's talk about it. Let's go out for coffee, or let's just sit down, or whatever it is. But let's talk about why we're doing what we're doing. What's the goal? What do they need to learn, right? And how are we going to come together with this, right? And then you can talk that stuff out. Yes, it can be a difficult conversation. Absolutely, it can be a difficult conversation, but it's one worth having. And this is something I haven't talked a lot about in this group, and I'm going to talk about it more in the work we're doing. But it has so much to do with relationships. Show me a young adult child who is struggling to launch, to deal with life, to be independent, and I'll show you some parents, caregivers, but parents who are having a struggle in their relationship, right? It's at least a stress, right? It's a stress on their relationship. It's a toll on the relationship. And this is very important to come together, that you don't let this situation get in between you as parents, right? Start dividing you, start pulling you apart, because then you got a whole other level of problem. So it's really about boundaries, which is a different conversation, but it fits into this, right? I talk a lot about personal boundaries. Well, this is a marriage boundary, right? This is about parents, or the boundary around a family, and the parents saying, hey, we need to stay unified. Even if our adult child is struggling, right? We can't let that tear us apart, right? And you're better off together on that. So it's very important. And any relationship for that matter, right? The relationship with your parents, like the grandparents, relationships with, perhaps the aunts and the uncles involved, whoever it is, right? When you're not on the same page, that has a toll on your relationship. So to go over that again, you need to have a conversation. You need to talk about why are you doing what you're doing? Why do we each take the different approaches? What are we thinking? What are we feeling about this situation, right? Then talk about what's the goal? What's the short-term goals? What's the bigger goal, right? What does our kid need to learn? How do they need to grow, right? And then you start talking about, okay, how are we going to do this, right? And a lot of it is going to become pretty clear, right? I have a lot of faith in parents. I have a lot of faith in you, that when you're aligned and you can see the situation clearly, and the parents are unified, you're going to be able to figure it out, right? You're going to be able to come up with an approach. Because here's what I know. A lot of times, the first thing you try, the second thing you try, the third thing you try, as far as let's set this boundary, let's have this limit, let's have this talk with our kid, let's let this natural consequence come in. Your first attempts are not going to be 100% successful, right? So a lot of parents say, well, should we start with this and start with that? Yeah, I have some insight into where you need to first have your boundaries or your reaction. But a lot of it's more about, you'll figure it out as you go along, right? It's more about being unified. So what are they learning? And then, that guides you into the approach. Another point I want to make is about the mindset, right? And it kind of comes out of like, where does your adult child need to grow? What do they need to learn, right? Parents want to be good parents, right? Anyone involved wants to be helpful, right? They want to be doing something effective. But what does it mean to be a good parent, right? To be effective in the moment, right? That's something you want to look at. Because if you believe that the right thing to do is to take away all the struggle, right? If you believe when your child is stressing out and anxious, that the best thing to do is to step in there and calm them down, remove whatever's making them anxious, right? Fix the situation, then that's probably what you're going to do. right? But what if that isn't really the most effective thing? What if that's really not what being a good parent is in that moment? And I use that loosely because I don't want it to be shame based, right? Bad parent, good parent, right? You're just figuring it out. But what's going to be effective, right? Well, maybe they need to feel that anxiety. Maybe they do need to feel that stress, right? Maybe they need to learn to fix it on their own, right? Maybe being effective is not stepping in, right? Maybe that's the most loving thing that you can do is have a boundary, right? Or if you believe that the drill sergeant approach is the best, right? I need to go in there, whip them into shape, and just kind of break them down until he or she learns their lesson, and right. If you believe that is what is going to help, right, that's probably the approach you're going to take. But what if what is really going to help, right, is someone who can talk calmly with them, someone that they can talk about how anxious they feel, how worried they feel, right, how heartbroken they are. Maybe that's what they need, right? Maybe what they need is more of a guide, right? Instead of a drill sergeant, they need someone to sit down and talk with them and say, yeah, I get how you're feeling. I felt that way too in the past, right? So how can I help you? How can we work on this, right? Maybe they need more of a mentor, right? So focusing on what you believe is effective and what is being a loving, caring parent, taking a look at that, and so when you put those two together, what does my child need, right? How do they need to grow? What's the goal they're trying to accomplish, right? And what's the way that I'm going to be the most effective, right? Then that can really change your approach. So that conversation is absolutely worth having. And I encourage you to have it. Now, if you've been struggling in your relationship, that might be a hard thing to do, right? Because it's often turned into fights. It's often turned into arguments and, disagreements. And a lot of times parents are like, I don't want to try to have this talk again because it's just an argument, right? I encourage you, that's the kind of thing where you get help, right? And I don't mean that in a severe way, right? That's when it can really help to have someone else guide you. That'd be a perfect time to go see a counselor, right? Or a mentor, or talk it through with somebody else who could come and help the two of you talk through that. And that could be even a short thing. I've done that plenty of times as a therapist. I know many other therapists who it's short. It's not this long-term counseling. It's where parents have sat in front of me and they say, we're not on the same page here. And it turns into an argument every time. Can you help us talk through this? Right. And we can do that. Right. It can be just a safe, productive environment to talk through something. Right. And then maybe that's the end of it. Right. That's all they needed. We're on the same page. And then, right, move it on. So I encourage you to do that. And if the other person won't do that, right, then focus on your part, right? Everything I just said, right, you can do for yourself as a parent, right? You can pause for a moment and say, okay, I'm not just going to react. I'm going to be proactive here. I'm going to think about, why am I responding the way I'm responding? Why am I reacting the way I'm reacting? How am I thinking about what's going on with my adult child? Right? And then think about, okay, what's the goal? Right? What are we ultimately trying to do? And then how am I going to help my child learn? Right? Am I trying to fix things too much? Right? Am I not being involved? Am I avoiding things? Look at your own approach. Why are you doing what you're doing? And what do you need to do? How do you need to help them learn and grow? And what's going to be effective? Right? What's going to be the most loving version of yourself? sometimes the most loving version of yourself is going to have some tough love, right? It's going to be like, hey, I care about you so much, right, that I'm willing to set this limit because you have to learn this. If I keep doing it for you, if I keep fixing this, then you're not going to learn. So I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to enjoy watching you struggle, but I'm going to be okay knowing that that's the best thing I can do for you right now, right? Or maybe the most loving version of you is the one that's going to come in and say, you know what? I haven't talked with you about this. I want to talk. Let's talk. Let me hear what's going on, right? And how can I help, right? There's so many different directions, but look at that. What is that loving version that you need to tap into, right? And you doing that work is it matters, right? And that might be your best way, right? It's certainly what you control, right? You focusing on you and what you're doing as a parent is the best thing you can do to influence the other parent, right? If they see you changing your approach and getting some traction with that, I'm not guaranteeing it, right? But that often, right? You've created a change in the pattern. You've changed your part of the pattern, and that's going to create the best possibility or opportunity or chance that the other people involved, your partner, other family members, whatever, are going to make that change. It certainly can open up a conversation, right? I know these are difficult situations. I expect there to be a lot more questions coming my way about this because this is honestly one of the biggest barriers to parenting a stuck adult child is that the people involved, the parents, the caregivers, the other influential people are not on the same page. So this is a big point. And it's something we're absolutely going to get more in depth as we move forward with the coaching groups and the things like that. So if you want to be a part of that email list, right? The link is here, and I'll put it in the comments as well. And I think it's in the description as well. The email list is the best place to get that info on more resources and tools sent to you, but also the Facebook group. It's private, but anyone's welcome who is a parent, right? It's just to keep the spammers out and the people who aren't serious. So go ahead and send a request to that. Parents of Adult Children Failure to Launch. And that's the name of the group. You can search that Facebook or the link, and then the email list is in the link. So thank you for watching. I'm going to chill just for a second, and if there's any questions or thoughts that pop up, I will address those. And we'll be doing this every weekday, 10:30, the coffee chat. And I don't have coffee this morning. It's just water. Too hot for a second cup of coffee. So I went with water. Okay. I'll tell you one thing. This is just on a streaming side of things. It's been quite a learning curve. And one of the things that I don't really trust Facebook because sometimes when I do a live stream on Facebook, it doesn't always show me the comments, and then it pops up afterwards. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, unless I use my phone. But when I use just a regular webcam, it doesn't show. But on YouTube, it does. So I just noticed that it depends on which one I'm streaming in. So if you put a comment, point is, I apologize for the people who leave comments and I don't see them till afterwards. I don't know why that happens. All right, I think that's good, and we are going to wrap this up for today. So I will be reading those comments, and they make a difference. That's what I respond to. So thank you guys, and I will talk to you tomorrow at 10:30.